Today we're going to answer the question, if you had to pick between two similar cryptocurrencies in the same industry, providing very similar services, which of the two would you pick? We're going to talk about compute power within artificial intelligence as well as gaming. The two are Render and Aether. Now, why am I doing this? I did a video the other day, actually a couple days ago, which turned out to be fairly popular, meaning it got a decent amount of views compared to my other videos. It was comparing XLM and XRP, mainly because they have similar technologies. And when they both started, they both had the same CTO. Someone left XRP, they went and started XLM. Regardless, that was helpful, I think, to compare two. Now, I got comments like, well, why don't you just buy both, dummy? And I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but why am I doing this? I'm doing this because this is what I do on a daily basis. And I'll tell you why in a moment. I'm Brian. My disclaimer is, I'm a big dumb animal. Don't do what I do. Informational purposes only. I'm going to do a bunch of these videos because I think it's a great idea to in each one compare two cryptos and say, of these two, which would you buy? I'm going to call it the Crypto Comparison Extravaganza. Nah, it's stupid. But I'm just going to do a bunch of them. And the reason I'm doing is because I mentioned before in one of my videos that I've got over 60 crypto myself in my portfolio. And I've got them in different categories and I've got them at different market caps. And I have my reasoning why. And many people will say having more than 60 doesn't make any sense. It's hard to manage, etc. Yes, valid. But the point is you can't buy them all. So opportunity cost says I've got limited time to manage a portfolio. I, you, everyone. And we probably all have limited capital. So where do we want to put it? Some of those same people left the comment of, you have too many crypto. And then when I say XLM or XRP, they say, buy both. It's like, okay, well, those two statements kind of don't make sense because I'm not going to say, nor are you going to just buy the top 200 crypto. That would be the easiest thing to do. Just buy the top 200 or just buy the top 100. Well, no, opportunity cost says we got to make those decisions. Now, I've been in crypto for a long time, but for the last 2 years, I've been buying for this particular cycle, hoping and expecting to have a decent run up. And over that time, a lot has changed. I started buying in 2023. This is 2025. That's a long period of time. I have sold some. I've swapped some in and out. And as I see these various cryptos, some make progress, some not make progress, I might want to switch. So we can't buy everything out there. So let's compare those in particular categories and say if we had to pick one, which one would we pick? All right. Aether and Render. Let's talk about those. Oh, first, a plug for my school community. Down below, you'll see a link. I've got a community. I've got courses. Why do I do that? Because I believe that crypto is going to continue to grow, exponentially grow. I was around during the dot-com boom. I remember when no one knew how to make a website. And here we are today. Everyone's online and you can just click and make a website. Well, getting into crypto right now is not easy. We're at the beginning of that learning curve. You have to be somewhat technical to understand a lot of these things like wallets and all the various ways of moving things around or bridging, you name it. We will get to the point where a lot of those hard steps will be taken out. That could be a while. And by the time that hits, well, there may not be a lot of volatility or profit in crypto anymore. So if you want to get in now, yes, things are more difficult to do and understand, but that also means that the opportunity could be much greater in terms of multiplying your capital. So take a look below because I've got courses on how to do everything you're going to want to know how to do. And we have daily discussions on crypto itself. All right, that's my plug. I always have to do that. All right, so now let's look at the two. They are in two popular categories. This category is AI and big data. And many of these, I'm not going to go through every one, but they provide different solutions. Crypto can be in many different categories. This is coin market cap. You can look at it in particular categories. We've got Render here as number 47. That's of all crypto. But you can see in this category, it's number 4. Its total market cap is 1.6 billion, fully diluted 2 billion. I like to compare fully diluted to fully diluted when you're looking at a long-term investment. Shorter term, you're going to look at market cap. Then we look down here at Aether, and it's about 1.2 billion fully diluted, only 286 market cap. So the market caps are greatly different, But fully diluted, which basically means what is the entire enterprise worth? You're looking at 2 billion versus 1.2 billion. Now you may say, why am I going all the way down here looking at Aether? What about all this stuff? Because these are all very different in what they're providing. Render and Aether are the closest. They both provide GPU compute power. If you don't know much about computers, a long time ago when I was a kid, you had your board and you had your CPU and you had two kinds of memory. Well, at first, not really, but you've got your RAM and then you've got your hard drive. Okay. So you put your files and stuff on your hard drive and most of the computation is done. It can be, with the RAM and the CPU. I'm simplifying things. Of course, you can do swaps and stuff. But over time, they said, wow, the CPU's burning up a lot of power and we're making them faster, but what else could we do? And they had graphics taken care of on the board. Then eventually they had these little slots on your motherboard and you would stick a graphics card in there. Like, ooh, now we can take some of the compute off there and put it in the graphics card. Graphics card was limited. And they said, you know what? We can put a brain on that graphics card. So now you got a brain on your computer, which is your CPU. Now you got a brain, which is your GPU on the graphics. If you can offload some of that, you can make that sucker even faster. Then they threw memory on it and all kinds of stuff. Then over time, they said, wow, these GPUs are extremely powerful. They can do all sorts of things, particularly when it comes to AI and gaming, which is what we're going to talk about. So GPUs, NVIDIA, that's why NVIDIA took off recently, because of their GPUs and because the AI industry needs so much compute power. These are highly tailored solutions to various industries. Let me explain. Oh, that was AI and big data. They're also in, which I think is the most valid other category, DePIN, Decentralized Physical Infrastructure. What does that mean? Basically means this. You got your computer sitting there and you're working, right, software, whatever you're doing, your compute power is right there. It's centralized. It's sitting at your business or at your home. Decentralized means you need certain things done. You want it done fast. You're going to send that out, that job or whatever it is, out over the internet. It's going to run it on a whole bunch of other computers and then send you back the results. Hopefully cheaper and faster than you could have done it yourself. That's decentralized. It's out there on other computers. So it's in decentralized physical infrastructure, which has all kinds of cool. I call them cool because these are your bare bones infrastructure, revenue generating stuff, but it's not sexy. So we'll talk about that towards the end. What do I mean? AI, everyone thinks that's sexy. Gaming, everyone thinks that's sexy. Compute power, However, it's got a huge need and it's going to make money. Render's here very close to the top, and you can see Aether's not that far off. These are all very different. Some just provide storage solutions as opposed to compute power, and some are just very different. So now we understand the industries that they're in. Let's talk about Render itself. What it does. High overview. Render has been around, I believe, since 2017. They call it the Render Network. Now, it was created by another company, which has software for the graphics industry, the movie industry, and that sort of stuff. If you're not familiar, like I was with a podcasting company years ago in California. Started off with mainly audio, then we went to video, then we started creating our own shows. And when we worked on, filming and creating these videos, then you had to render it for its final form. That took forever. The amount of compute power was ridiculous. So what's interesting about this, and let me just give you an example of a use case. Let's say you were a small boutique graphics firm and Disney outsources you to do some sort of graphics in a movie. And you've got 5 people, you're using the software to create all this. And then when you're done, you've got to have that thing rendered. Well, it takes a lot of power. It's expensive. So you're either going to go buy all that hardware, which could be quite expensive, or you're going to do the pay per use model. If you're familiar with cloud computing and all this other, everything's going to pay per use, right? Software as a service, all this stuff. Okay. That's essentially what this is. And they made this network because of the need that a lot of their customers had. Some customers may have the hardware, but they may be under a deadline and that's not going to get it done fast enough, that being their own internal hardware. So they may have to outsource some of it. There's so many different use cases. So when you use their software and they have hooks into Macs and into other popular softwares, not only their own, for doing the creation, 3D graphics and that sort of thing. They've got hooks into it so that you can essentially, when you're done, just click and send it off It's done decentralized through the network of GPUs on the render network, and it comes back. In a nutshell, they started focusing on all of that visual. And then they realized it has over time, because it's only been the last couple years when AI has just exploded. Remember, they started 2017. This is 2025. That's an 8-year period of time. It's only been the last couple years when, NVIDIA stock went through the roof and AI started being talked about. And they said, holy smokes, this is perfect. We have the GPUs, and the GPUs are what everyone wants for AI. So they and their network, they've created tools and whatnot specific to the visual as well as the AI. Okay, that's render. Here's Aether. Now, Aether, their token was available 2024. It's has not been around as long as render. And they have been going after AI and also gaming, specific solutions to gaming. And if you look at their homepage, 400,000 GPUs on demand. 400,000. Okay. You're not going to have 400,000 at your boutique studio. Over 400 million worth of compute power, 95 countries supported around the world. When they say that, I think what they mean is they've got compute power in 95 countries. I'm pretty sure you can be in one of the countries that doesn't have compute power and use the network. 99.99% uptime. Okay, great. What's interesting is that they're willing to give you this information. What I haven't seen is that information provided by Render. We'll talk about that when we get to pricing. In other words, how much compute power do they have? The most recent thing I could find was a year or two ago, and it was 50,000 GPU. They got to have more than that if these guys have 400,000, but who knows? Now, Aether did put this out, their May update. Annual recurring revenue, $141 million. Total GPU containers, that's not total GPUs. That's instances that have been instantiated or used on one of their GPUs in these containers. Total compute hours, 810 million, blah, blah, blah. All these different numbers. But here's the one that pops out at you. 141 million. Why should that pop out at you? Because if we look at Aether and their current market cap, it's 285 million. That's just a 2x. Their market cap. Now, their fully diluted is 1.2 billion, which is just a 10x on the revenue, which a multiple of a technology company, a 10x is very low. Typically, the companies that have the highest multiples are usually technology. So a 10x is extremely low in my opinion. Now, what about Render? Render doesn't tell us about that. My knee-jerk reaction is if you don't have transparency and you don't tell us your numbers, then your numbers must be bad. Is that a valid assumption? No, that's dumb. It doesn't make sense. But I think most people feel that way. If you're not going to tell me about your numbers, your monthly, your quarterly, your yearly, then you're hiding something. Because this company's telling us everything. Why aren't you? Okay, that doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong. Doesn't mean they don't have amazing numbers. Who knows? All right, now that we know what they both do, and they both have a slightly different focus, but pretty much the same. But it does help when they're going after different industries. Obviously, Render, I would say, it's been around longer, and it's got its hooks into Hollywood and all these different video graphics needs. Aether does not have its hooks into that like they do. So they've also, Render's going after AI, which makes sense. Aether's going after AI and big into gaming. Let's look at their pricing. Here we are with a Render chart. Obviously, Render's been around longer, but let's just go back to like July of last year. It gives us about a month worth of data. It had a run up as they all did around November, December. It peaked at around maybe $12, but in terms of a close, it was like 10.5. It's at 3.2 right now. So what's that? Like a 3x, maybe 4x going back over time. Everything's pretty much been doing the same. Down, up, down. They all sort of had the same trajectory for the most part. If we're looking at volume over this time, during this run up, this is on balance volume. I talk about it a lot. Volume precedes price. Look how much it ran up. And then we're going to look at where it is now. Okay, so if we look at where it has gone down to. So when the price closes up and goes up, you add the volume. So you want to see buying pressure. It's pretty much since November, December kind of just gone sideways. I mean, yes, it's up, but here's a low. It almost has these three. I'm not drawing trend lines. I'm just drawing lines to give you an idea. You know, it sort of hit these three in terms of lows. It was in this general area. and the volume went down. So then it hit another low and the volume's even lower. And then it hit another low. Here's what I mean. This, in my opinion, is generally not a good sign. You've got a low and the volume's here. It hits it again and the volume's even lower. It hits it again and the on-balance volume's even lower, meaning people are selling. So before I would jump into something like this on a short-term trade, I like render for the long term. Definitely do. But if for a short term, I would want to see more buying pressure. I want to see it doing this. And right now, recently, it's done that. We want to see it do that, which would tell us that we've got buying pressure and the price is going to break to the upside. Currently, just looking at this one indicator, and that's never what you want to do. You want to look at multiple ones. But just looking at this one indicator is kind of telling us that it's got selling pressure at the moment. So could it go lower? Maybe. Could it go more sideways? Probably, until we start to see some buy pressure. That's render. Oh, let's look at its volume at November, December. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other one. Okay. Most of its 4.4. That's its most difficult resistance. And then you're going to want to see it get through, tested as support. And then it's going to run up and it's going to have more resistance around 7.1. And then it's going to run and who knows where it goes. But right now we need to see, in my opinion, some more upside pressure. Let's look at AETHIR during the exact same time frame. I also have OBV. Now, if you notice here, you've already noticed it, that down here around September timeframe to where it is now, that OBV is doing that. Compare that to render. Render's been doing, I redrew my lines, but I think you probably remember. Render's been doing that, kind of sideways, which isn't terrible because the price came down substantially. So it's holding its own, but it doesn't really have that upward buying pressure that you can see here in AETHIR. AETHIR, here's its last, it was September timeframe around here. Before it was up around here. Let's see, earlier December around 0.08 or 0.09, it's 0.03. So that's a 3 to 4x, 3x right here. So they're basically from their peak about the same. Let's look at the volume at price. This is the amount of volume trading going on at certain price levels. The black line saying this is the biggest resistance to get through. You see there's a lot of chop buying and selling at this price level. So it's going to need to get through that and then move up. And then its next one is here at 0.05. But look, that's a big difference. And then maybe around here, but it's pretty much going to take off as well, we hope. The biggest differential is look at the volume. Now it had this huge sell-off and it basically reached, didn't quite get down there, but pretty darn close. And what was during that time, its OBV pretty much came down to almost the same. It had a big sell here. However, if you look, it hasn't been out that long. If you look back to 2024, look how much lower it was. So you've got this higher price. Now you got a lower price. So you would expect that a lot of people sold to get it down here. Well, no. As a matter of fact, it's been going up. Unlike render, where the higher price to lower price, did a lot of people sell? Well, more people sold because it's down here and it's been going sideways. More people sold in that scenario than in this scenario. Personally, I like this chart better if I had to pick one of the two. But let's talk about that and compare them. So render's been around longer. Render's focus mainly, let's just say, in two areas, which is the graphical as well as the AI. I'm guessing they're doing great revenue. They've had that software hooked up to it for quite a while. Then you've got AETHIR, which is fairly new, but they might have more GPUs and compute power, and they're going after AI and gaming. And I think gaming is the number one industry in the world in terms of revenue. Actually, it might be something else that I don't want to mention. But let's just assume it's gaming. And then AI. Those are two of the biggest growth markets. And they are positioning themselves with the most compute power. And they are transparent. And when we looked at the total fully diluted value, renders at 2 billion, AETHIR's at 1.2. They're not that far off. However, for me, if I had to pick one of the two, I actually own them both because I own 60 cryptos, but I would go with AETHIR. I think the chart looks better. I think long term, they're in two industries that are going to grow even faster. That's my opinion. Hope that was helpful. Have a great day. I'll be doing more of these videos comparing to industries because we all can't buy everything. There's opportunity cost and there's capital restrictions. Thanks for watching, and I would appreciate a like, and please do subscribe and comment. I could have missed all sorts of information about Render in the last couple months or Aether. So if you've got it and I don't, please put it there. That's why I make these videos. Not because I'm a know-it-all. I know I'm not a know-it-all. That's why I say I'm a big dumb animal. I do this because I need your help, because together we can learn a lot more about these cryptos if we share information. If I miss something, please let me know. I have a thick skin. So when you tell me I'm dumb, bald, or ugly, it's okay. It doesn't bother me. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.